But Shlomo Carback used to say good Shabbos every day. It's a good Shabbos. And everybody, this is Rabbi Boruch MerKur.
Hello.
I came across his videos on Facebook, and there aren't too many rabbis that really impress me. I don't know if you guys know, but I have a soft spot for Rabbi Dror. I don't agree with him hashkafically and everything, but you could see that she's very Menshedic, and I see the same thing in Baruch. When he speaks, it seems like he radiates goodness. And I invited him
Thank you
for
so
an
much.
interview. Everybody knows that I'm not a big fan of Chabad generally. I mean, I don't
know that.
necessarily teach. Well, these guys know that. It's nothing against you. It's just, I mean, certain things. And it's not for what people typically have a problem with, the whole Mishachist agenda, the whole Yechi thing. It's more like on the first two prakim on the Tanya. But I guess we could discuss that later. I don't think that makes or breaks anyone's religion. I mean, there's many Jews, like the students of Rav Shach, who are upright, kosher Jews, who happen not to agree with Chabad or other groups hashkafically, but we're still part of Klal Yisrael. We're still moving forward. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Baruch?
Okay, so I come from a conservative background. It's basically traditional. We had Friday night meals, not necessarily on Friday night, because the night starts at nightfall. It was a religion of convenience, and I came out of that. And when I got old enough to sort of question the foundations, when I was brought up in, which happens about when you're 13 or 14. And to me, it happened when I started reading my own things, when I went on my own search and journey, and then I started questioning sort of the belief system that I grew up in, and I eventually I started to get involved with hippie philosophy, and then Eastern mysticism, and like even Zen and karate, the philosophy behind it, and all kinds of things in the Western front too. I was into Nietzsche. Then I eventually got into postmodern philosophy, which was like the most contemporary thought in philosophy, which was fascinating. It was actually developed by a French Jew, promoted it a lot, Jacques Derrida. And he was a very deep thinker, and he brought in cultural aspects with philosophy that really resonated with me. Then I met Chabad, because one of my professors, Dr. Bloch, Alav Shalom, he was an expert on Aristotle, and I took a course in Plato with him in philosophy of religion. And in my final year, he invited me to his sukkah for sukkahs. He didn't know I was Jewish because I had long hair and everything. I guess he didn't know. I didn't know. My friends were all Jewish. But he didn't pick up on that. And he finally invited me to his Chabad house. It was Sukkot time, and I met someone there named Yirmiyahu Harrison. And he had studied postmodern philosophy. He was taking a graduate course in psychology. And he was doing all the postmodern psychology, which is really incredible. And so he gave me that perspective, which I wasn't quite as much into psychology as I was in philosophy. But everything he said to me totally spoke to me. And I said, wow, he's introducing me to the ideas that I really naturally drawn towards, but he's showing it to me within Judaism, within the Torah, and that was basically Chassidus. And when I saw Chassidus, I knew this was the truth, and I had this wall full of Sfarim that I wanted to delve into. And eventually, I made my way through some of it enough to appreciate that this is. It didn't take me more than a week, really. It wasn't even actually the philosophy that got me as much as dancing with Simchas Torah. To dance for God was something that it was ceremonial. You're not dancing, you're just standing there trying to wear a suit properly or something stupid and superficial like that. But here was the Judaism about actually engaging the person, and that inspired me, and in my life became dedicated towards that. Is that a good introduction?
Yeah, no, that's great. I know Lubavitch doesn't like using this terminology, but how long have you been on the derech?
Probably 23 years, 25 years.
How old are you?
48.
I'm 41. I converted about 20 years ago in South Florida. And before converting, I was actually a Baptist minister. I went to seminary, Jacksonville Baptist Theological Seminary, trying to get closer to God. And I came to the realization that JC wasn't God or Mashiach, and I really had nowhere else to go, right? I felt that Judaism was thrust upon me. So I went to my local Orthodox synagogue, and I said I wanted to convert. It took me about 3 years. I converted. Then I moved to Eretz Yisrael. I eventually made Aliyah. I became a Makarav when I was living in Yerushalayim in Hebrew U. And most people don't know that Hebrew U is not all Jews. There's tons of Christians and, kids studying abroad who are very inquisitive, who want to know more about Judaism. So we had a student center in Hebrew U, and every time that we'd have an event for the kids, we'd bring in a speaker and everything, we'd actually get more non-Jews than born Jews. So then I had the great idea. I'm like, you know what? Instead of just pushing these people away, why don't we offer them Judaism? In the frum world, you just can't run on a good idea. So then I went to the Rosh Hashiva of that time of the Derek program in Or Sameach, which is, I was also learning in Or Sameach. I learned the Nesha Torah in Or Sameach. And then, I asked the question, and he said there's absolutely nothing wrong halachically with encouraging somebody to become Jewish as long as you focus on Jews first. So in Israel, I started a program of encouraging people who are not halachically Jewish to consider becoming Jewish if they like. There's no coercion here. And I've been doing that for about 18 years. My audience is made up of born Jews, no-ides, inquisitive Christians or Muslims, all searching for the truth. And I try to make the God of Israel as lovable, as meaningful as he is to me. And God willing, these people would either want to become Jewish or remain more Jewish in a more purposeful manner. And that's what I do.
The Torah is supposed to have a message for every single human being. But the message to convert is something that for sure we don't promote because really we're a treasured nation. So the idea of to deliberately go out to expand the body of the Jewish people in terms of conversion, I don't know if that's within the pale of Judaism. But the idea of telling everyone that they have their own connection to God, that is also founded on Torah. And that there are teachings, like, for example, one of the Sheva Mitzvahs is to believe in God. So that is a huge body of Jewish philosophy, Jewish, like Chassidus and Kabbalah, all falls into the category of having a relationship to God.
It doesn't really say believe in God. In the Halacha, it says Birkas Hashem. It means not to curse God. Chazal wouldn't say to curse God, so they said not to bless God. It's a prohibition of them cursing God. There's no actual belief to mamish believe in Hashem,
Really?
like for a goy. The Rambam writes in Hilchos Malachim that if a goy keeps the Sheva mitzvahs because they were given to Moshe in Har Sinai, he's considered one of the Chasidei Umot Olam.
Right.
So in there, it does include belief to have a chelik in Olam Haba. Because the notion that a ger toshav is only made when Israel is keeping the yovel in the land, they don't get a chelik in Olam Haba because there's no belief there. It's only 6 negative commands and 1 positive command of dinim to keep the previous 6. But then the Rambam
theorizes... The first one
theorizes...
is not to believe in idolatry. And the idea of not believing in idolatry is the flip side of believing in God. There's one continuum. If you're not going to believe in idolatry, by default, you're going to believe in one God. For some reason, for Jews, they're divided into...
I understand, but that's not how it appears in the prohibition. In other words, they're killed for breaking any one of the Sheva mitzvahs. It says that they steal something that's worth less than a Sheva pruta, they're killed. So you're not going to kill a goy for not believing in God. You're going to kill him if he curses God because it's 6 negative and 1 positive. I'm all for the Sheva mitzvahs, by the way. I'm not against them, but I believe that if someone's coming from a serious belief system, like Islam or Christianity, which are packed with mitzvahs, but they don't even know it. You have to give that person a viable alternative to the belief system that they're walking away from. If not, like if you give them...
So why can't Nayachai, the religion of the Das Emes, which is what Rambam calls it, I believe, the religion of truth, which is universal, why can't it be organized?
Because the Rambam writes, also in Hilchos Malachim, that one of the Averas is that they're not allowed to make a religion out of it. Whether they either have to keep the Sheva mitzvahs or convert.
He uses the same word when he says they can't make a new religion. He uses the same word.
Right. So unless you believe the Rambam is going to contradict himself, because he clearly says that nowadays their only option is to convert, right? Or just keep Sheva mitzvahs.
Convert to what?
To convert to Judaism.
No. Or to keep Sheva mitzvahs, which is a viable alternative and one
only
that
keep
recognizes
Sheva
the
mitzvahs.
relationship with God.
Yeah, but not to build... Well, wait, hold on. There's 2 different things here. There's a ger toshav, which doesn't necessarily have a relationship with God. And
Sure
then
he does. Every single human being, every animal has a relationship with God.
No. I'm saying, but they aren't required to have a relationship with God. In other words, a ger toshav is someone who either lives in the land or is traversing to the land, who is given the option to either convert or keep the Sheva Mitzvahs. It says that...
You're wrong. I'm going to show you a sikha where it's...
All right, fine. No, a sikha is a saying of the Rebbe. You have to show me in the Rambam.
No. He's quoting Rambam here. Great.
All right, so if he quotes the Rambam, that's fine. In terms of an Eved Kanani, it says that if an Eved Kanani doesn't want to convert, because we know that we forcibly convert an Eved Kanani in a quasi-conversion, right? I mean, he's not liable for mitzvahs that are time-bound. It says that he has to at least be forced to keep the Sheva Mitzvahs or convert.
In terms of practical managing your country, but ultimately everybody has a relationship with God.
No.
And the Jewish people are going to be a light unto nations to bring them close to God.
We're dealing with halacha. Like, we're not talking about like belief. In other words, like, how can the Sanhedrin adjudicate a Gentile for choosing not to have a relationship with God? It doesn't make any sense. I mean,
right. So he doesn't have to be adjudicated, but he still has a personal obligation to try.
Right. So it's optional then.
It's optional in terms of not dying.
Right. Well, that's halacha. Like, we're dealing with halacha. Like, what is a Jew obligated to hand over to a goy? I mean, really?
I'm not talking just halacha, though. I'm saying, why not expand it beyond halacha and say, what is my philosophical, ethical responsibility to my creator? That Adam Arishan had to appreciate. And Abraham, before there was an organized religion, he came to himself. And that was Das Emes. There wasn't.
I was just quoting the Rambam. I'm going to find it for you, like where you find that sikha, where the Rambam says you're not allowed to create a religion out of it, but just keep.
I'm looking it up right now. I have the sikha in front of me, by the way, but it's already been translated.
That's fine. Go ahead.
You want me to say it here?
Yeah, I mean, say it in English. I mean, quote the Rambam. I mean, the sikha is just kind of like a saying of the Rebbe.
It's not just a saying of the Rebbe.
I mean, you know what I mean. I mean, I'm not trying to belittle the Rebbe here. It's in the prism of the words of the Rebbe.
So yeah, we're going to eventually be teaching the whole world. That's what Rambam ends up with. The finale of his magnum opus speaks about that, how we're going to be teachers for the world. We're going to not know, I have to even be taught about God ourselves, because we're going to have a relationship with God that's so intimate that we will know God ourselves. No, we're not going to have teachers. That our master is not going to be covered over anymore. He's going to be revealed to us. And we're going to be teachers, and the whole world, it says, Kol Bali Olam, is going to be involved with this whole process of understanding God, and we're going to be the ones to teach that to the world and really be a light unto nations.
Yeah, but not really to teach. It says we have to coerce them.
No, that's in terms of fulfilling the bare minimum, require them to survive.
Yeah, but you're talking about the Sheva Mitzvahs, right?
The ones who survive. It
says that we have to coerce them to keep the 7 laws, and if they don't keep it, we put them to death. It doesn't sound like this is anything to aspire to.
When they're alive? Afterwards, for hundreds of years afterwards.
There is an understanding, it's not very popular by Chazal, that the whole world's going to convert to Judaism. I'm not saying this is what I believe, but this is an understanding.
We're not taking converts after Mashiach comes. And there's a whole discussion in the Gemara.
That's not a halacha. I mean, that's a medrash.
What?
But that's only a medrash because it's built off kind of faulty understanding, because the Rambam in the Surabia brings down the notion, because it says that in times of David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech, the Beis Din HaGadol didn't accept Gerim. But then it says in the same parak that Hediotot in the street would convert people, even that when the court would decided not to. In other words, conversion never ceased when times were good for the Jewish people, because that's the understanding that's brought down by the Medrash, that when Mashiach comes, the people are going to convert because of affluence. But I mean, it's only a Medrash.
No, Rambam brings it in laws of conversion, that he says that when times are good for the Jewish people, we don't take converts. Even in times of Shlomo Melech, they shouldn't have been taking converts. All
right, so let's read it together. It's in Surabia chapter 13, because that's his source for saying where the Hediotot could perform conversions, where that you don't need a rabbi, and it says that people shouldn't think that King Solomon married Gentiles. But he's saying that the Beis Din HaGadol, with the Sanhedrin, who didn't perform conversions, but the Rambam actually brings it down like a mitzvah. It says in Sefer Mitzvahs, the third mitzvah, like of the positive mitzvahs, he says that to fulfill the mitzvah of loving Hashem is to do what Avram Avinu did in Haran. And it says all the Meforshim teach that he converted the men and Sarah converted the women.
Haran.
Right, Haran, yeah. So it's
right. But we don't proselytize in our religion. I think Rambam is clear on that.
No. All right, so the Rambam writes in a tshuva. It's only brought down as tshuva 149. I'm sure it was originally written in Arabic. It says that it's mutter to teach Torah and it says mamish to notrim, to bring them to our detenu. Okay, but then there he says that we shouldn't do it to Muslims because Muslims will use it against us. But the Rambam was not against proselytizing. I mean, that's a misconception. Only because he brings down the notion of Sheva Mitzvahs, which I believe in. He understood that once someone wanted to convert, if they decided not to convert, well, they would be considered a heretic among the nations. This is what it says in Hilchos Malachim. And
well, practically speaking, everybody knows that the halacha is you're supposed to push away a ger 3 times.
There's no halacha like this.
But that's what's practically done. I mean
that's what's done. That doesn't mean it's halacha. It's never brought down by the Rambam. The Rambam says the opposite in Surah chapter 14. It says that when someone comes to convert, well, you tell them some of the light mitzvahs and then some of the heavy ones, and you don't overburden him lest he turn from the good path back to the bad path. And it says that from the outset.
So you want to bring back the Rambam. You want to be okay. I mean, that's a real pioneer there. Because,
no.
I mean,
hold on. Shulchan Aruch in the laws of conversion. It's in Yeridea. He quotes the Rambam verbatim, and the Rambam is just quoting Yevamos verbatim. I'm all for the Sheva Mitzvahs. I'm not against the Sheva Mitzvahs. I'm just saying that if someone wants a deeper relationship with God, well, they should consider becoming part of Klal Yisrael.
Well, if they want a part of our lots, that's their business. But that doesn't mean that every other person doesn't have a relationship with God. They do, and that's what the Rambam's talking about. The end of Hilchos Malachim. He's talking about how the whole world is going. We're going to be chachamim daily, and we're going to teach the whole world Torah. It says, "Lefichach Yisrael chachamim daily, b'yedim dvarim astumim." They're going to teach everybody. The whole world, including Gentiles, will be only to know God. That is the whole purpose of humanity on this world, not just the Jewish people. The Jewish people are going to be the teachers of the wisdom of knowing of God.
Amen.
We're going to be the ones to
I don't have a problem with
help people.
But
so in terms of halacha,
if people want to convert,
people do what they do now because for reasons.
If they want to convert, then you know what? What Judaism isn't for everyone. Torah isn't for everyone. But if they want to convert, well, they could also be part of the teachers and not just the students.
That's probably true, but in general, Jewish people, that's the whole role of the Jewish people.
Oh, right. To be an Or Lagoyim, for sure. I'm not against it. I'm against offering the Noah laws as a viable alternative to Christianity or Islam. It seems like these guys, would they be going like from a higher level of holiness to a lower level?
Why would it be lowered? I don't understand.
Because it has less mitzvahs.
So what?
Well, more mitzvahs means that you're doing more good. But less mitzvahs means that you're doing less good.
No, it's not true. It means that God gives more detail about how he wants you to run your life. With a Gentile, he's allowing them more freedom, that they could reach God through more avenues. A Gentile who eats crab is serving God. Whereas a Jew, he gives a very specific role.
Yeah, that's a ceremonial.
It's not ceremonial. It has to do with the whole role of the person in the world.
All right. In terms of ethics, a goy who walks past a man raping a woman, according to the 7 laws, he has no obligation to stop that man. He has no obligation to fight evil.
I mean, they have to set up a system of justice, and the system of justice says that you have to be careful about these things. Then it's the opposite is true. They'll be punishable if they don't.
It's a system of laws, but to enforce the previous 6 laws.
Yeah, as interpreted by the Chachamim of the era.
Well, that's the later Chachamim who are... Here, look. If we really love converts, we'd want to see more of them. Clearly, it would benefit the Jews to have more converts. If all the nations during World War II only adhered to the 7 laws of Noah, who would have fought Hitler? Who would have liberated the camps? In other words...
Everybody. 7 billion people, the equivalent at the time.
Really?
The Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach are the foundation of morality for all of humanity. They're not lacking anything.
I know the Rebbe taught that, but the Rambam didn't teach it like this. I mean, the foundation of humanity without lacking everything.
The Rebbe is the ultimate expert on Rambam. The Rebbe spoke about Rambam ad nauseum, and he brought Rambam back to the world, in fact. And
I mean, he introduced your Mishnah Torah Yomi.
Learning
and
Rambam,
I use
the
Chabad
thing once a year.
Yeah.
14 books once a year.
Sure. Your Mishnah Torah Yomi. I'm a big fan of the 3 Prakma. I'm a big fan. But there are people who only go by the Rambam, and that's not me, by the way, who've also written commentaries on the Rambam, like Rav Kapach, not only necessarily the Rebbe. I mean, I'm not Chabad, but there's a way to understand the Rambam, not through the ideology of Chabad that feels that there's some obligation to offer the Noahide laws to people who already want to convert. As a matter of fact, there's no halacha that says that if someone comes to convert, that you offer them with 7 laws. The halacha is the opposite. It says that if someone comes to convert, you tell them that only Israel has a share in the world to come, to encourage them to want to become Jewish. Of course, the Rambam contradicts himself in Hilchos Tshuva and Hilchos Malachim, because one is the halacha and the other one is his opinion. So there's a difference between halacha lamaisa, what you're supposed to do, and the compassion that may leave your pen, that where you're writing a portion on Musar and ethics. So I don't believe that everyone has to become a Jew to have a relationship with God, but I do believe that the more mitzvahs you keep, Chazal teaches all the time, it's more opportunities to connect with the Almighty.
There's one mitzvah. It says in Tanya there's only one mitzvah. It's the mitzvah to believe in God. The faith in God is the one mitzvah that all the other mitzvahs are founded on that. There's a verse that says, I'm going to transform the nations to have a pure language, likroi kulam, that all of them should call B'Shem Hashem. These are the Amim, the nations, the Gentile nations. They should all call in the name of God, La'avdei Shechem Echad, I think you pronounce it, to serve Him as one body, as one unit. Right. All the Goyim not only going to have a relationship with God, but they're going to serve God as one unit. There's going to be one religion, and it's going to be based on the Chachamim in Yerushalayim, when Mashiach sits on the throne, and we're going to have a body of sages that is going to teach the one religion to the entire world. There are going to be different rules for different people, just like there's different rules for Levim, Amalevi, Kahanim. A Kayan has different rules, and a Gentile is going to have a set of rules that applies to them. But everybody has the obligation to connect to God, including animals and including mineral life. Everyone connects to God in their own way. And a Gentile is a human being who has cognizance and has intelligence and consciousness. For sure, that when it says that they're going to all serve God and call to God in a pure language, for sure they're going to have an intimate relationship with God, and it doesn't require them to put on tefillin.
So another shita brought down by Chazal in that same parak that's quoted by the Navi in Masechet Brachot, it says that when it says that all the nations are going to call unto God with pure lips, it means that the lashon is going to be Hebrew, because all the nations are going to convert. That even Chazal had a different understanding to this.
Okay.
But earlier,
he uses this as a proof that there's going to be Gentiles in the world to come. He's trying to answer how it could be that there's going to be Armageddon, and it says that everyone's going to be all Karkol Kobnei Shes. The Karkol Kobnei Shes. It says that all the children of Shes, of Seth, are going to be annihilated. So the Rebbe shows it cannot mean literally, because there's so many verses that says that there's going to be Gentiles. He quotes this verse that says that they're all going to be here to serve God with a pure language as one unit. And he quotes it as a proof that there's going to be Gentiles in the future to come, not that they're going to convert. So, I mean, I hear that you want to darshan differently.
No,
it's
not me. I'm quoting how
Jewish thinker that holds completely.
No, Chazal quoted like this. Is just one opinion. There's no monolithic understanding necessarily on metaphysical issues by Chazal. The notion that conversions are going to cease during Yamas HaMashiach is just one opinion.
I think Rambam holds that. I'd have to look at.
All right, look it up.
Source,
but
I'm pretty sure that Rambam holds.
I'm a Rambam guy, even though I don't only go by the Rambam. Now, I'm not saying that Goyim won't exist, because no one's going to be forced to convert. But to say that people are going to be forced to remain Gerim Toshavim is not how the Rambam holds. I mean, Chazal doesn't even hold like that. I mean, the notion is that with the highest level that someone could really achieve is to have the same relationship with God that Avram Avinu had. And Avram Avinu wasn't a Noahide. I mean, he wasn't a Ger Toshav. He was in a covenant with God.
I think you've got this wrong, because Adam Rishon is recognized as the source for all humanity. And he had the mitzvahs, to serve God. He didn't have to put on tefillin. It wasn't part of it. He probably did, but
all the Meforshim teach that he proselytized. Everyone. Ibn Ezra, the Ramban, he converted the men, and Dar converted the women.
It says at that time there was no.
All right.
It wasn't based on genealogy. It was based on belief. If you held the belief, you were considered Jewish. Before Matan Torah, after Matan Torah, all the converts that came at that time, then they became a different gedder, a different classification, that they had to accept upon themselves the mitzvahs, not only just believing in God. At that point, it changed.
So in Masachet Avodah Zarah,
I'll call you. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. Hilchos Malachim, okay, chapter 8, halakha 10. Moshe Rabbeinu lo yinchil atera mitzvahs ela liyisrael.
Right, and everyone who desires to convert. Correct? I mean, finish reading it.
You're right.
Right.
Whoever wants to convert, right.
Fine. But in Masechet Avodah Zarah, it says that the age of Torah began with Abram Avinu making Gerim in Haran.
In Haran.
Right, Haran. So that's the age of Torah. This is how Chazal understood it. That Avram Avinu is not the father of all the monotheistic religions like Islam teaches, but is the father of our monotheistic tradition. I'm not against what you're saying here. I'm just kind of taking it a little further. I do believe that if someone keeps more mitzvot, they're dearer to the Almighty. Here, look.
But
Let me
that's
pose
like
it
saying that a Jewish woman has less of a connection to God than men. That's ridiculous.
No, because a Jewish woman is able to keep as many mitzvot as a man could keep. In other words, there's a famous Ramban that says that a woman could say a bracha, like to sit in a sukkah, right? Even though she's not commanded to. And she say the same bracha, but she could say Asher Kedeshara Mitzvotav Betzivanu, even though she wasn't commanded to, just speak more like of a schus.
A woman's not pater a man for his obligation to say a bracha on his mitzvah when she's not obligated.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
So there is different gedarim, but that doesn't take away from their connection to God. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, I'm not saying that. Right? No. So you're saying that because they're not obligated to it.
Has the same connection to God. People have different missions in the world.
All right, this notion of mission is built off of Hasidut. I'm more of a purist when it comes to Chazal, and the Rambam, I think, is the best gateway to Chazal, because if it doesn't appear in the Rambam, it's typically not in the Mishnah or in the Talmud. Let me ask you a question. Is a Gentile who doesn't believe in God on the same level as a Jew who doesn't believe in God?
It says a Jew does not keep Torah is worse. He's the worst, the lower Tito or Nat, who only takes in and doesn't give out. That's what it says in Tanya.
No,
it says a Jew
I appreciate
has
that.
the capacity to be so high, if he doesn't use that gift, then he's actually lower than the lowest of all creations.
Mm-hmm. So how does Chelek Elokam Mimal Mamish tie into that?
Chelek Elokam means their potential is infinite. And that means they have the potential to drag the king's head into the worst place. It says in Tanya that it's like putting the king's head in the toilet. So when they do an Avera.
So a Jew who doesn't believe in God, next to a Gentile who doesn't believe in God, still has more potential to do good than that Gentile does.
Yes.
So, he is better than the Gentile then.
Better in terms of having a mission that's more all-encompassing.
I think that's better, no?
If you want to define it that way, yeah, then he's better.
Because the Rambam in Mor Nevuchim, for example, he speaks about being in the palace and being outside of the palace. So only because everyone has a spark and a relationship with God, what does it mean that everyone's inside the palace? Person inside the palace is the one who keeps mitzvot knowing what he's doing. In other words, there are higher levels and lower levels. So someone who only has 6 negative laws and 1 positive law can't be on the same level of someone who has 613 opportunities to connect with the Creator.
I disagree with that, because there's only one existence, that is God. Everything in the whole world, including a plant, including a rock, is only an expression of God. So there's only really one level in the essence.
That's a later notion. The Rambam didn't believe in that, by the way. All these notions like Tzimtzum and everything would have been against the Rambam's understanding of limiting God, saying that God couldn't.
The Rebbe proves that Rambam learned Kabbalah. That's why he started his whole thing with Yisayda Chochma V'Muda Chochmas. No.
Right, Chachma B'Da Das, you mean?
He puts Yud Kei Vav Kei right in the beginning, the first words of his teachings, to show that it's all about belief in God. And the whole Yisayda Torah, the foundations of the Torah, he speaks about that. And Hilchos Tshuva and Hilchos Malachim, everything is about the belief in God and your connection and intimacy with God.
No, I believe the Rambam was mystically inclined, but I don't think.
Sure, because look at what he says about the whole ideal of love of God. Look what he says.
Sure.
It's talking about being steeped in love of God as if you're steeped in love with a woman. That's what he writes.
Yeah, no, I'm not. The Rambam clearly believed in mythicism, but when people say Kabbalah nowadays, what they typically mean Lurianic Kabbalah, Postia Rizal. Now, the Rambam didn't have this, right? The Rambam didn't teach on Gilgulim. He didn't teach on Shadim. They even debated if he believed in Tachiyat HaMeitim. There was a reason people didn't like his writings, especially those who were mystically inclined, right? People like Rav Tzadok Gaon, he believed that you believe in Gilgulim, that you've adopted a non-Jewish belief. So his form of mysticism is different than post the 13th century.
Well, you're understanding Rambam through the eyes of his halachic work. And in halacha, Kabbalah does not necessarily bear its head. So there, it's in a certain sphere. That doesn't mean that Rama was not an expert in Kabbalah. He probably was. The Rebbe says that he was.
What do you consider Kabbalah?
Kabbalah to me is a way to understand how to relate to God through everything in the world.
Okay.
It means taking your relationship with God and saying it exists in the room where I am right now.
Oh, great. I mean, in that sense, I'm a Kabbalist too. I mean, I believe in this.
That's a good definition then.
But the understanding,
a very intimate relationship with God.
I mean, typically nowadays, it's understood on the teachings that stem from the Zohar. Now, the Zohar, like historically, was found, in 1270 of the Common Era. It claims to be written by the Rashbi, the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, but the Rambam that writes in Mor Nevuchim, he says that there was a mystical tradition, but he never received it. So,
he says that?
Yeah, he says that in Mor Nevuchim. Yeah, but
that's awesome because he says there could only be one person in a generation at the time who knew it.
I don't think he says that.
He does, for sure. I've translated recently. It's in the Ilchus Yiseda Torah. I have it right here.
There's only one person in the generation of the time.
One
please quote
person. It. That means if that person died, there would be nothing.
If you could quote it, I'd love to hear it. I mean, I know the notion of Rosh B'nai Yisrael, but that's more like of a...
Except, we'll see. I can barely even see anyone.
No problem. It just seems like unlike the Rambam for him to say something like that. It just seems it was so awesome. Inclusive. Like of everyone. It says in like in Hilchos Yom Tov, it says that he says that anyone could elevate themselves to the level of a Kohen if he opens himself, that he becomes Kodesh Kodashim.
Kohen Gadol.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. You're saying a potential Mashiach in every generation? Is that what you're talking about? Or Rosh B'nai Israel?
No, that's a different thing. Uh-huh. No, I'm saying that the secrets of the Torah were only taught to one person in a generation.
Oh, really?
It's where the Rambam says you have to be 40 years old. You have to have your belly full with
the Rambam never says that. 40, you're quoting the Rashba.
Okay, but he says something similar.
He never uses the word Kabbalah.
He says that you have to have your belly full with Talmud first.
Oh, no, you're thinking of Pardes.
Yeah.
Right, Pardes. He says, now Pardes was a different thing in the time of the Rambam, but then post the Zohar, right? Post the Zohar of Peshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod, that acronym didn't exist in the time of the Rambam. Like Pardes was a mixture of knowing where halachas come from in terms...
That's not what Rambam says.
But that's a definition of what Pardes would have been to him, because he doesn't explain what it is. Yeah, but the notion
he does explain what it is. The tile and the Pardes, to go into the secrets of the Torah, to understand the way God creates the world, talks about the knowing the Merkava, and he talks about knowing Ma'aseh Bereshis.
Well, that, yes, talks about Merkava. I wish the Rambam was a lot more expressive regarding Nister, because it would really probably blow us away. He wrote a lot of Sforim that were long.
Got it.
Okay, go ahead.
Cool. It says, these 4 chapters, this is in chapter 4, okay? All the things he taught about before in the laws of the foundation of the Torah, about the way the whole universe is, the way the angels are and everything. It says these 4 chapters of the Shebechamesh mitzvahs ha'elu, hem she'achamim rishainim kari meisam pardes. This is what he does define pardes very clearly. This is what the Chachamim call pardes. Pardes, as it speaks about in the Gemara, about the 4 men who, like Rabbi Akiva and Acher, they went and Shimon, I forget the names. The 4 sages that went into Pardes. Even though these were great sages, they couldn't understand everything clearly. And I say, the only person that's fit to stroll in the orchard of the Pardes, someone whose belly is already full. When you go for a stroll, you've already had a good meal, right? Okay. What does it mean that they should have bread and flesh? They've already consumed the whole meal.
Quoting what that's in the Gemara.
Everything we said in the previous 4 chapters of Hilchos Yiseda Torah. That's what he says clearly in the beginning of Halacha Yud Gimel, Perek Daled, Halacha Yud Gimel. Let me just finish this because it's really geschmack. Uh-huh. He says, because you have to have a full belly before you go for a stroll. What does it mean, a full belly? The bread and the meat that you ate is Leida Aser Mutar. You should know how to serve God in a permissible way. And to understand the mitzvahs. Even those things, knowing the mitzvahs is a very small matter. It's very superficial in comparison to the pardes. Oh, even though the Chachamim called it something small, Sharei Amru Chachamim, Davar Gadol Ma'aseh Merkava. The Chachamim say, what does it mean to have something as great? Great is the knowledge of God's chariot. But Davar Katan Havayas Abaye v'Rava, and something small is the whole arguments between Abaye and Rava, the Amoraim in the Talmud. Afal Piken Ro'uyin Hen Lakdimam. Nevertheless, it's fitting that someone should first delve into those things to know what's permissible and what's not. Because that's what causes a person's mind to be settled and clear. Almost done, sorry. And also that the mitzvahs are the good that God gave to settle the universe, the world, to make civilization and society, in order to have a ethical role to inherit the world to come. And the mitzvahs are something that's applicable to everybody, that everyone can understand. Okay, I didn't quote you the sort that said that's only for one person. I still have to find that. But here it does define pardes. He says pardes is the first four things in the Torah, which speaks about the creation of the world and the spiritual universe, which is made up of angels. It says here, check out, okay, look up chapter 3, law 9. All the stars are conscious, sentient beings. Okay? That is the most thing the Rambam writes. But he even says that the physical universe has an aspect of sentience to it, of cognizance, of consciousness.
I'm not saying that the Rambam wasn't mystically inclined, but his understanding of part is that he's telling over the story that appears by Chazal that changes in the Zohar. Kabbalah's understanding of part is
change. The Torah is one. The Torah never changes.
Right.
The depth of the Torah is brought out. There's only one Torah that never ever changed.
So you do acknowledge the Rambam's understanding of Pardes, because I told you first it was Pardes. I know Pardes is there because he's reiterating the story of Acher.
That's the story. He defines what it is. He describes angels at great length. I could read it to you. I have it in front of me right now.
Well, so Pardes isn't Pashat, Remes, Drash, Sod?
Yeah.
It is or it isn't?
He defines it here differently.
All right.
He defines it as what he spoke about in the first four chapters.
The Rambam's understanding of Pardes...
What does it speak about in those chapters?
Is not the same Kabbalistic understanding of Pardes, but that's post the 13th century.
There's one teaching, there's one Torah, but there's different languages to bring that out.
All right.
If Rambam was lacking the language of the Arizal, that may be. That does not mean that his knowledge and wisdom was not the same thing. He didn't have the language. That was articulated later. Someone had the schus of bringing it.
My point is that his understanding of Pardes is different than the Kabbalists after him.
No,
at least according to this text.
It fits perfectly. There's no contradiction at all. It's completely in line. How do you know about the angels? You know about the angels through the Torah. Everything is through the Torah.
Hold on one second. Chazal talk about angels. Chazal talk about demons. But the notion of establishing a new method of interpreting Torah and even halacha through Pashat, Remesh, Drash, and Sod, the Rambam never had that understanding. That's the Kabbalistic understanding of Pardes. It's not the Rambam's understanding of Pardes that he reiterates from the Talmud. Clearly, when the Talmud has notions.
I would say that this is the halachic context of all of what you just said.
All right, so find me an instance before the 13th century that mentions Pashat, Remez, Drash, and Sod.
Okay, but that's not the whole. The Rambam's defining it differently than you.
Of course, because the Rambam didn't hold to Lurianic Kabbalah. I told you from the beginning that the Rambam is mystically inclined.
It resonates perfectly.
Go on.
It fits in perfectly with that. It doesn't in any way contradict that.
The way it contradicts it is that people build new ideas off of what's known as Remez and Sod. New ideas. Now, the Rambam doesn't endorse this. As a matter of fact, when they build new ideas that they call Torah Shebal Peh, then the Rambam limits it to the Beis Din HaGadol in Yerushalayim. So it's not the same understanding.
No,
but the Rambam believed in angels. He didn't believe in Shadim. Of course, he believed in mysticism. But this is why, I asked you, what is Kabbalah to you? Because Kabbalah, as understood today, is really post-Zohar. And the Rambam didn't teach principles that appear in the Zohar.
It's consistent. The Torah is always consistent.
The Rambam is a codifier. I mean, he wouldn't call his own words
But
Torah.
as he is a codifier, he's speaking in a certain language, the language of Torah law. That does not mean that it's not founded on principles that are mystical.
How is law ever built on anything mystical?
Well, we see that, for example, it's brought in Shulchan Aruch regarding how long you have to wait after eating meat before you could have milk. 6 hours, I think it says in the Zohar. No, it's the Machlekes Rambam and Rashi. But it quotes the Zohar in that context of kashrus. It's brought. The Zohar is something that is relevant to even halacha about how we wear the minhagim of wearing tzitzis, whether we put a shirt on top or whether we wear it outside. That's also a Kabbalistic discussion. It's brought into halacha. I mean, actually, halacha overrules there. The Kabbalistic you're supposed to wear on top, I think.
It depends. I mean, if you're Sephardi or Ashkenazi, if you're Chabad. Arizal says to wear it outside.
Okay, yeah.
But depends what you're speaking about, the beged or the actual tzitzit.
Right. So, but Kabbalah is considered in terms of halacha. It's at least a consideration. And halacha always overrules Kabbalah except in certain circumstances. But it's part of the conversation.
My group doesn't hold like that. I'm not trying to convince you either way. For us, halacha is what was developed by the Beis Din Gadol, and that's it, and that's all. In terms of halacha, Torah Shebal Peh, Torah Shebiktav is what appears in the Chumash, right? And then everything else could be edifying or not.
There's no Beis Din Gadol anymore. That means there's no Torah anymore. The whole Shulchan Aruch happened outside the whole umbrella of that organization. It didn't exist.
Shulchan Aruch is a compiler of halacha.
And everybody accepts it, and you have to accept the Shulchan Aruch, even though we didn't have a Beis Din Gadol at the time of its authorship.
Wait, hold on. Well, the Shulchan Aruch is a compilation of 3 codifiers: the Rif, the Rosh, and the Rambam. Right. So these guys didn't just invent halachas; they extracted them from Divrei Sofrim. These are the words of Chazal. That's why Smith
which is what Rambam says, that everything comes from the Talmud. That's applicable to every single person. Whereas customs that happen later are more localized, but they're still halacha. That's what Rambam writes.
Where? I mean, he writes in the first parak
in the beginning, in the preface to his Ilchus Yesod Torah, he speaks about that.
So, in the first parak of Hilchos Mamrim, he says that the Beis Din Gadol, but they were in charge of declaring, Takanas Gezeras, and then he says Minhagim also. In other words, a community with
the whole premise of Rambam is the fact that there is no Beis Din Gadol anymore, and now we need someone that codifies the entire laws. And that's what Rambam set out to do in his magnum opus, the Yareh HaChazaka. That's the whole purpose of it. Which says that there was no Beis Din Gadol at the time, yet everything he writes is binding on all the Jewish people.
Hold on. To codify a law is different than establishing a law. In other words, he's not making up laws. He's quoting laws.
He's Machadish Torah in the area of Halacha.
Yeah. Before the Rambam, people went by the Rif. And before the Rif, people went by the Geonim, right? But they were all going back to the Mishnah. Anyways, regardless, I feel that people have to keep both Torah Shebiktav and Torah Shebal Peh. The Shulchan Aruch is honestly probably 90% Rambam, because where the Rambam says that he could count basically on one hand how many times he disagreed with the Rif.
Oh, yeah?
And that's it. Now, if you want to bring Shulchan Aruch Harav and Mishnah Berurah and Minhagim, all right. This is why nowadays people have the choice to be Sephardi, Bukharian. If you don't like one understanding, if you want to eat kidney, you become Sephardi.
But you can't just become something. I mean, you are who you are.
I mean, if you can't become something, then
traveling. When you follow the mitzvahs, when you keep 2 days, if you're from Eretz Yisrael, when you're Chutz La'aretz, all these halachas are discussed. I mean, we have achreinim; they have a role in the Torah.
Yeah, for sure. So you could just become something. This is why there's a Chabad, because people dropped their belief system and they became Chabad. I mean, Chabad. From the time of the Baal Shem Tov, before that, there was no movement of Hasidim. I mean, you're free to pick up and adopt another nusach, another ideology.
Okay, I don't know about that, but I'm not going to argue about that.
In Eretz Yisrael, there's tons of Temanim who become Lubavitch.
The Rebbe wants them to keep their customs. That's our approach. That's why they keep their payas and everything.
Right now,
something that's not halachic. I'm not a Pesach or anything, so like
not halachic. I was hoping you had the source, Asher, where you said that you don't hold that way, but there is an opinion that Chazal thought that the whole world would convert to Judaism or something
Yeah.
like that.
So in English is Masechet Brachot in the Tractate of Brachos, 57.
Oh, let me write that down. 57 Masechet Brachot.
You don't want that too.
No, it says in Perkei Avos
I'm going to
also.
write that down too.
Oh, it says it in Pirkei Avos?
No. In Perkei Avos says, it says basically to be like the sons of Aaron and bring all of humanity to Torah. But these notions permeate. Here, for example, like Pesachim Pei Zayin, where the Rabbi Eliezer says that the reason that we were put in Golos was only to acquire converts.
Right.
With this notion,
Chassidus interprets that a certain way.
All right. Mind you, Chassidus is probably 1,000 years after this statement was written. But
that doesn't mean that they're not divining the correct intent behind the words. They might be bringing it out that was always concealed. That's the whole idea of Torah, was a way, in Kabbalah in particular, was a way to conceal the secrets of the Torah, to reveal it to the worthy who had the depth of understanding to appreciate and uncode the messages that are imbued within metaphor. They write poetry in order to conceal wisdom, to not allow the people that are not worthy of it. In other words, they're going to drudge it through the mud, but rather people are going to use it for a good, holy purpose. That's why they made it so difficult to unravel. And sometimes later in history, it becomes revealed because it's appropriate that it's now can be accessible to everybody. That's the role of revealing secrets later in time, because it's a progression.
Right. I always teach that there isn't a progression, but that we don't believe in progressive revelation. Just in other words,
the Arizal says mitzvahs. The Arizal said that when he would live, it was now a mitzvah to reveal this wisdom. But before that, it was not a mitzvah. Even the times of Rashbi, he on his deathbed, he revealed the secrets of the Torah to everybody. But it was only kept among Yechidus Segula, very special people, the elite only. And one person in a generation, according to Rambam. I have to find you a source for that, but everybody knows.
This is post Kabbalah. The Arizal. Only because
post Kabbalah. Kabbalah exists. There's a Sefer Yetzirah that Avraham Avinu wrote, or no, I don't know.
I believe it was written by
something like that.
Avraham Avinu. It's quoted by Chazal. Sefer Yetzirah.
Adam Rishon wrote, I think, Sefer Abba here or something like that. He wrote one. Or
it's called pseudepigrapha. It's easy to say that older people wrote this and that. I don't think Adam wrote any book. Right? I'm just saying. From a rational perspective.
Of course he did. What is he going to do for 970 years in Israel? Of course he was not. Even Rambam says that all the Chachamim took their own notes. We just don't have them.
Yeah,
They used to take notes.
No, for sure. He writes it in the Hakdama to Mishnah Torah. That's why we have a Talmud nowadays.
Well, I got it from a different place, but yeah.
Yeah, but notes for sure. Chachamim, yeah, but to say that Avraham Avinu wrote a book, Adam Rishon wrote a book,
Why not? What were they doing? These were the wisest people that ever lived. Of course they were writing books. We don't have all their stuff.
It's kind of problematic because Torah says, Lo tosef alav velo tegram mimenu. Right? The notion of being a Baal Tosif means...
That's not what it's talking about.
What do you mean? It says don't add or don't take away.
No, everyone's supposed to be Mekadosh and Yanim Torah. How much more so the greatest people that ever lived?
Yeah, but not binding
people. That's how God brings Torah into the world. Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who taught us the Torah.
Right, the Moshe Rabbeinu existed within the 5 books. In other words, outside of the 5 books...
put on tefillin.
That's a medrash. That's also a medrash. There's a distinction between midrash.
It's the foundation of our belief system to know that the Avos kept all the mitzvahs.
Yeah, but not everyone's a chassid. That's the thing, and it's fine. I'm sure, you believe that if someone is a Syrian Jew or Satmar Jew, they're still Jews, right? If they're keeping Torah, they get a chiluk on Olav Haba, no?
No, but this is a Maimer Chazal that everyone has to believe, but they're not even part of Klal Yisrael in terms of Torah. This is a Maimer Chazal.
But that what?
That the Avos kept the Torah Achla Nitna.
Wait. You're saying that if you don't believe that the patriarchs kept the Torah, then that you're outside the fold of Israel?
No. Outside.
Breaking up?
Here, can you repeat it? Sorry, that you're breaking up a little.
I think Rambam says that
can you repeat it?
That you have to believe.
Here, can you repeat it because you broke up a little?
Okay, I'm trying to repeat it. I hope it's not breaking up. A Jew has to believe everything that's written in the oral Torah is part of Torah, and if they don't, I believe it says there that they're heretic.
What
He said,
about the disputes then?
wait,
The disputes, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim, everything is the words of the living God. They're both
so
true at the same time. And you can go through different situations and explain how that is. I can tell you why we pass like Beis Hillel now. We're going to pass like Beis Shammai when Mashiach comes. How could that be? Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. And then there's an incredible sikha about how it could be when we're going to, eventually we're going to pass like both at the same time, which is impossible to understand. How are you going to light a menorah?
So the Rambam actually says that anyone who says that all midrashim are nonsense and shouldn't be followed is a fool. But anyone who says that they're absolutely true is also
no. I think you're getting. I don't think that's.
Like Vein Yaakov, it quotes Avraham ben Arambam in his introduction to Agadah, and he says the same notion. That we even have the same idea with the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, but that anyone who walks around thinking that all this actually happened is a fool. But anyone who says that is completely disposable.
That's a different thing. That's a different thing.
Like
the words in the Torah, once it's codified as Torah, it's verbatim the words of God.
The Talmud?
All of the oral Torah, until the times of the Shach and the Taz, okay, were said with Ruach HaKodesh. And therefore, it's verbatim, word for word, God dictating his words through these authors, these mortal authors in the world. That's what the Torah is.
So, I'm just here to bring you a different perspective, right? But in terms of Elu
I'm here to tell you mine.
No problem. But Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim is understood between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai that all the rulings, the halachic rulings of the Beis Din HaGadol, they're all there, like they were given by God. The rulings, in other words, as long as you paskin by some authority that had smicha, it's like you're listening to the word of God. This is what it says in Parshat Shoftim. But that if you disagree with them, you're disagreeing with me. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that every medrash that appears by Chazal that was given on Har Sinai. Even the Rambam tells us that what he believes was given on Har Sinai. That he brings down with the notion of halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and he limits it down to 30 laws. And it's technically less, because the rabbis disagree with him, because that one of his principles is that how do we know that it's a halacha l'Moshe Sinai? Is if this law was ever disagreed upon. But then later on, they were saying, well, this law actually was disagreed upon. So it's less. Now, there was another understanding, that the 13 principles of exegesis, but they were also known as the 13 principles of Yishmael, that was also given in Har Sinai. In other words, that's what we get what's called Midrashei Halacha, with the instructions on how to interpret Torah Shebektav. And this is what appears in the Sifra, in the Sifri, in the Mechilta. But to say that the whole Talmud that was given on Mount Sinai, it's nothing new, because I've been telling people this is what Chabad believes, and this is why there's people who kind of opt out, like from Orthodox Judaism, but I don't think you could say this is what the Rambam believed. The Rambam always made distinctions between what's obligatory to believe and what's not obligatory to believe, right? This is why
I'm pretty sure he says that. I have the Sefer here. I could look through the whole thing. I'm pretty sure he says that if you have to believe every single word in the oral Torah is part of the Torah, the body of the Torah. And if you don't, it's called heresy. The laws of heresy. What's that exactly?
It depends what you call oral Torah, or what he called the oral Torah.
He defines it very, very clearly.
With Torah Shebaal Peh, in that lashon, what never appears in the Mishnah, Talmud Bavli or Talmud Yerushalmi. It's a much later notion. But the Rambam only understood the notion of halacha. That's what was binding. And he writes in the first parak, Kefilas Mamrim, he says, Beis Din HaGadol, Sheber Yerushalayim, Hem Iker Torah Shebaal Peh. But that it's the Beis Din HaGadol that's the root of Torah Shebaal Peh. They're ruling.
Yeah, but meanwhile, he's not part of the Beis Din HaGadol, and he's compiling a work that codifies the entire oral Torah.
Sure.
And he says you don't need another Sefer except that and the Chumash. Those are the only two Sfarim you need to be a good Jew.
That's what I always say, because he's bringing down the laws of the courts. He's not inventing new laws.
Well, of course he is also. He's Mechadish Torah. Who is a bigger Mechadish than him? No.
Look, to have a Chiddush is one thing. To establish a law that's binding on all of Israel just because you feel like inventing it is another thing. The Rambam clearly says in Hilchos Sanhedrin that they ruled by vote. They instituted laws by vote. And the smicha, but that he didn't have. Smicha was lost. This is why.
Look, we wear tefillin. It's either Rashi or Raibid or right. The Rabbeinu Tam. Those were way after the time. Come on. What you're saying is not founded on the actual practical, what people do to keep the mitzvahs. People practically have to know Do I put on a Rashi tefillin or a Rabbeinu Tam tefillin or both?
No, that's
and that is
Masorah.
a practical thing that has nothing to do with Beis Din Gadol.
Okay, there's halacha, and then there's Masorah. In other words, we don't know how to tie tzitzits exactly how Chazal did it. So the Yemenites have their own Masorah, where the Ravid had a different Masorah, right? That's Masorah. Yeah, but the halacha.
But Divrei Elokim Chaim also applies there. Everybody has their minhagim. Everyone connects to God through the Torah the way it comes to them in their communities, locally. That's part of Torah.
All right.
That's the Torah of Babel. That's the Torah of exile. That's the Torah when you're cast away, when you don't have the Beis Din Gadol. It still has a place, and it's still organic, and it evolves.
I mean, communal. Here, for example, like, do you eat kidney during Pesach?
No.
Why?
Because it's my minhag. Minhag Yisrael Terehi.
So minhag Yisrael Torachi is understood.
Or Torahu. I don't know which
Torachi,
gender it is.
But that's understood alongside the first parak of Chukas Bramim, but that says that the Beis Din Gadol was in charge of establishing minhagim. In other words, people didn't just invent their own minhagim and expect them to be binding on their community. It was the court.
Many minhagim, including the tefillin that you wear, came out way later. So you figure how you resolve that contradiction.
That's the thing. I have the choice.
No, you don't have any choice. You have to put a Rashi, so you're not fulfilling the mitzvah of putting on tefillin. Okay, and that came later.
I mean, I disagree with that. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's Yemenites. Even I remember once I had a show in North Miami Beach for 2 years, and then we were looking for a Megillah to read, and we purchased the Yemenite Megillah, and we compared it with the regular, Ashkenazi Megillah. It's a different cloth, right? So they use something called Javil, right? So that's one with different minhag. That if you weren't happy with the regular cloth, that you could walk around with a thick piece of leather to read from. But they actually add 2 letters in their Megillah that doesn't exist in the Megillot of other customs. So this whole thing that only because the Ashkenazi community does it like this, there's no way to sort of. I mean, it's not so monolithic. In America, everyone's Ashkenazi, even Sephardim, right? But in Eretz Yisrael, I mean, it's a melting pot of minhag.
But minhag is part of Torah. That's what I'm trying to say. That actually proves my point.
It is when it's instituted by the court. In other words, minhag
don't have to be instituted by the court. It's not true. Minhag can be something that actually contradicts the court, and in that case, often the minhag rules.
Well, the notion of minhag is tied into the halachot that have to do with local practice. The court decides whether a certain halacha should go by a local practice, like the Rambam says of men wearing jewelry. He says the halacha is that the court decided that goes by local custom,
right? And
that's because the court allowed it to be so. Now, minhag colloquially just means tradition, right? Like if someone wants to wear an orange hat, what's my minhag? Like who are you to disagree with it? And it's binding on all my students now. That's kind of absurd. All right, cool.
But if everyone starts doing it, it might not be considered absurd. It might have a halachic application at that point. If all Jews started doing it,
I mean, there has to be a court who establishes it.
But that's not the way it's happened throughout history. This is just not the way it's happened.
To be with Tivrosh Minat Tzibor is one thing. To separate yourself from what everyone is doing, but that we shouldn't do unless the Torah is being desecrated. Okay? I mean,
many times in the halakhic discussions they say, but people do this, so therefore it's becoming minhag, and therefore we're going to follow that minhag. It's okay. Many times in halakha.
I mean, something being okay is one thing, and I mean,
no, they say you should specifically do the minhag. You should follow the minhag.
Right. I mean, you should follow what people do. It's not obligatory on all of Klal Yisrael.
It's obligatory in the people in that community, basically.
Okay. So it's communal law, so it's not really obligatory.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
it's obligatory on the community.
In that shul, right? And you could go to the Lubavitch across the street and do.
Okay.
Okay. Or anyways, I appreciate you being so patient. I mean, I really want to talk about other stuff. Because it's, I'm kind of boring the audience because this is what we talk about every week.
I don't even like talking halacha.
Yeah, no, I do.
Mysticism than halacha.
It's just, I'm not against people studying the Tanya, and I'm not against studying the Arizal or the Zohar. I don't think that it's obligatory to believe, and I think that gets people just as mad as if I would have burned it. What makes you a kosher Jew?
Yeah,
it's like what you just quoted in the Rambam's Hagdama to Mishnah Torah. He says, now that you have Mishnah Torah, like all you need is the Chumash and Mishnah Torah. Right? And Mishnah Torah doesn't deal with mysticism outside of the Musar forum, like Hilchos Deos.
I quoted where it does mention Pardes, and he defines it clearly as Maisa Bereshis and Maisa Merkava. Those are two Gedorim to understand the way God creates the world and the way that God administers the world through angels. Those are two aspects of Pardes that Rambam speaks about in
before you said Pardes,
definition.
I told you that it was Pardes. Yeah, but I said that his understanding of Pardes is not the Kabbalistic understanding of
Well, it's pretty Kabbalistic if you're learning about angels.
Okay. The whole notion that someone calculates a gematria and for 2 hours like build a whole shiur around it and extracts binding ideas, that's what Pardes nowadays. And they'll say that this is just a story.
Well,
this is not the way the Rambam understood it. Right? The Rambam was quoting what appears in the Talmud regarding Pardes, which is the instance of Rabbi Akiva, Acher,
Rabbi Shimon ben. Okay, the names are escaping me. There's two others with the same name, Shimon, I think.
Fine. I understand that the Rambam had a different understanding. I mean, the Rambam clearly didn't believe in everything that mystics after him believed in. And for sure, like, he would have been against notions of every Jew being a piece of God, mamish.
Why would he be against that?
I mean, more nevuchim. I mean, the whole notion of God limiting himself or contracting himself would have been against the principles of the Rambam.
There's ways to resolve all those contradictions. I'm telling you, if you want to see the Torah as one Torah, you could understand all these seeming contradictions.
You got to become Lubavitch then.
I don't think so. I think you just be a genuine person that wants to know the truth.
All right, man. Perhaps next time that we could discuss philosophy, life, and living. And
anything.
Musar.
I'm just concentrating. I'm really not a halachic dude. I'm looking through length trying to find you.
Oh, you're breaking up.
I'm close to finding it, but I guess we're signing off now. Oh, yeah, it's breaking up a bit here. Yeah, I'm here though.
But everyone, please join me Monday night at 9:30. Every Monday night at 9:30. For Faith on the Line with Rabbi Asher Meza, and every Thursday at 10. Baruch, do you have a website or
I'm
a channel
on Facebook, Baruch MerKur, and I have a website, basemashiachmagazine.org. That's where I've been the editor there for over 20 years. So I have a lot of material there.
Awesome. But regardless, I encourage everyone to watch his shows. I mean, this is how I found out about him. I mean, he speaks very beautifully, and the ideas that I've heard, even though I don't agree with everything hashkafically, I mean, they sound great and uplifting. I always make a distinction between what's obligatory, but keep doing what you're doing, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that approach, saying things that to inspire people and showing out depth and the beauty in the Torah. That's more my approach.
All right, guys. Good night.
Shabbat shalom, Asher.
Thank you so much for having me, Rabbi Asher Meza. I'm nice to meet you. Even like I'm just getting to know you, and I really feel like it's a great thing that you welcomed me to your show. Took a chance with me, and you didn't know what I was going to say, and I appreciate that. And the whole topic is fascinating and new to me. All these ideas, and I hope you find your place that you want. I don't know if we sign off, but to sort of get closer and closer to the truth of what you're looking for, and to bring that out to everyone in a way that will bring light to their lives.
Amen. Amen.